Hello, my very dear Cancers. This is your reading for the week coming up, which would be, oh my goodness, June 2nd. So you have got this image, and it's hard to describe, but imagine if you were in a swimming pool, or it could be the ocean, but I think it might be more familiar in swimming pool. And that would be, when you are working towards the deep end and you're on your tiptoes, you gradually you're on your tiptoes trying to keep your head above the water line. And yet the water by its nature is starting to move you because it's getting deeper and deeper. And you're struggling trying to keep up, to keep your head up. Now, the image that I get for that is, or the feeling that I get with that image, is that if water represents emotion, then this feels to me as though for some of the Cancer Collective, you're going to be in a place right now, or have been recently, or coming up soon, where you are feeling that you're not exactly comfortable with the emotions that you are literally swimming around in. That you're resisting something here. And you're trying to keep your feet on the ground, but the water is trying to lift you up. And you're moving deeper, you're moving closer and closer to the deep end. You can't seem to get back to the shallow end again. Well, you know what? This is actually good news, because what this means is you're moving into something that has the capacity to really change things for you and increase the shift that you've been going through about your emotions and about how you see yourself and about how you deal with your emotions. Now, what I'm getting with this is I'm getting the message that once you stop trying to keep your feet on the bottom, the water by its nature is going to support you. That you can float on the top, if that's your choice. You can choose to swim, or you can dive, or you can do water ballet, like synchronized swimming. But the reality of it is you have options in terms of how to deal with this once you embrace the fact that you're in the water. But once you're resisting it, if you're resisting it by trying to keep your feet on the ground, you're going to be straining yourself in a way where you can't really deal with the water. You're trying to deal with your own balance. You're trying to deal with your own body. But because it's in resistance to the water, the emotion, it's destabilizing you. And it's making it difficult for you to find the good in the water, because right now at a state like that, when you're trying so hard to keep your head above it, you're not going to be enjoying the water at all. You're going to be resenting the water. So the thing is this, the cards that you're getting here, the first one that you get is telling you that your mind is responsible for not how you perceive the world, but it's also a major factor in what you create around you. And that you actually really have the choice of how you think, what you put into your mind, how you use your mind. Now, we're going to be talking about this specifically around emotions because you're in water. Now, what you're being told here is experiment. So if you're the kind of person who, for example, decides that they're dealing with the water means they're going to just float on the surface, not really get into it, try something different. Maybe you want to try journaling. Maybe you want to try doing some meditations to specifically target different emotions. Maybe you want to seek help in addressing an emotion. Or maybe you just want to let yourself sit with it and be conscious and be aware of it. Now, the thing that you're also being reminded is that many of these patterns about how you deal with emotion, in spite of the fact that you've made huge changes, Cancers, you've made huge changes in terms of how you see things, how you deal with emotion, the value that you give to different qualities of loving, different kinds of support that you give, and your right to get things back. You have done a lot of work. What this is suggesting is, can you look back and see where in your childhood you developed the patterns, the old patterns that were not serving you? Because if you can look at that and say, okay, if my childhood had been different, how would I have responded? How would I have trained myself or been trained to see myself, to deal with love, to deal with emotional responsibility, emotional intimacy, whatever it is that's really coming up for you now? And say, if that had not been the case, if I had had what I consider to be now an ideal childhood, what would be 3 qualities that I would have that I didn't have, that created situations for me that were not the most loving or the most supportive? What might those qualities be? Because the wonderful thing about this is, if you can imagine the quality, first if you imagine the thing that you didn't have, then you can imagine what you would have. And as soon as you start imagining what you would have, what you would like, what you could be, then you open your mind and you open your energy to the possibility of it. It's also just a really great way for you to be able to target some of the, I'll call them insecurities, some of the styles. I like the word attachment styles because I think that's a really nice way of talking about how we deal with intimacy and connection, and that there are very different attachment styles based on how you were molded as a child. What was the attachment? What was the intimacy? What was the emotional interaction like in your family? Because that's where you got your training. So what this is giving you the chance to do, Cancers, is say, okay, so what did I not have? The way I would look at it is, where was I insecure? Where did I feel wounded? Where did I feel as though I was not seen, not heard? Where did I feel as though I became somebody's caretaker and that's what made me valuable? Other things that you might look at would be, was I encouraged to speak up? Were my emotions welcomed in the family, or was the family so potentially volatile or troubled that emotions were expected to be repressed as a way of kind of maintaining a status quo and not moving into chaos? So you get to look at those kinds of things, and the value to that is then you can also look at that and say, well, my goodness, if it had not been like that, what 3 of those things might change? It might be trusting that my emotions were valuable and wanted by other people. And that would mean then I would be willing to share my feelings and thoughts instead of sugarcoating everything. If it was being valued for who I was beyond taking care of situations, if I was encouraged just to be playful and have fun instead of being saddled with responsibilities that were beyond my years, well, maybe I would find it a lot easier to create a work-life balance. Maybe I would find it easier to be in relationships where there's equal give and take. So you get to look at those things and say, okay, can I see what the patterns were that grew me into what I was? And how can I look at what my structure in life is now that I have outgrown, and how can I create new boundaries within myself with how I choose to speak, with how I deliberately engage those characteristics and those qualities in order to liberate myself from any of the old behaviors and attitudes that were there. Now, what's really interesting is, and I think this is really important to hear, it's important for all of us to remember, just because we weren't taught them as children doesn't mean we can't own them now. The only reason, or the main reason why we haven't owned them now, is because they haven't been modeled to us. They haven't been part of the structure we were raised in. And so that can make us feel as though we don't have access to them, but we do. If we can imagine them, we have access to them. If we can name what it wasn't and what we want it to be, that we can have. It's a matter now of making choices, and that's like one of the key cards that comes out over your mind and creative process. It's you making the choice of what you want it to be and then choosing to continuously act in that way. Own that as a quality that because you like it, because you find it valuable, you will do it. And of course, it's a process, right? We don't always immediately learn those things. It is a process of doing it. But I tell you, I've seen it time and again, and I've experienced it. When it's a change you want, when it's a change you desire because you see value in it, when you can imagine it, you can move into it. And it is progressive, but the cool thing about it is you tend to find situations that encourage you in that progress. The right kind of friendship, the right kind of boss, the right kind of friend, the right kind of therapist, the right kind of literature. You tend to find naturally, magnetically, those things that are going to support you in those changes. And that's part of how the universe answers you. That's part of how the universe interacts with you and gives you what you need. That's how your guides and your angels talk to you. And that's how your higher conscious mind gets to you. When you have the desire, the heartfelt desire, and you have the intention, and it is positive and it is about self-love, self-support, self-honoring, that's what the universe wants. So as you move towards that, you're going to get what you need to support that. So, Cancer, one last thing about the analogy. You know, the beautiful thing about water is we float. When we stop fighting, we float. And from the floating position, we can swim around underneath. We can open our eyes or not open our eyes. But the water is there to support us, and our emotions are there to support us too. Emotion is energy. And energy runs everything, fuels everything in our bodies. So what we want to be able to do is learn how to navigate the water as it's appropriate at different times. But water is our friend. So the experimentation thing, sometimes you want to dive deep. Sometimes you want to look. Sometimes you want to float. Sometimes you want to snorkel, stay on the surface, look down. Sometimes you want to scuba and go as far as you can. But the idea is, Cancers, you are a water sign. You, by nature, are inclined to have strong emotions. So it really behooves you to be able to start learning how to embrace that, embrace them, and allow them to work for you. Now, how do they work for you? Well, partially by exactly what we just talked about. Being able to look at what has held you back emotionally, what traits you would have liked to have had, and claim them. Okay? That's it, Cancers. Take care.